And we are live. Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. Hope everyone is having a great and fantastic day. It is a good 11 a.m. over here in good old Texas. I saw Dr. Squiggums was in the chat. Hello, Dr. Squiggums. You're still around. Hello, welcome, welcome. Now, today is going to be a very, well, I mean, every single one of these Game Master Academy sessions is always really important, but today in particular, I'm talking about communication. And I mean, it's a pretty big and essential topic. I mean, there is a lot of talking and a lot of listening and communication that happens, of course, at TTRPG tables. So I'm gonna take my time with this one. Just gonna be sipping my coffee, and we'll be talking about talking, essentially, well, and listening as well. So, and this is, I think, the 5th session that I've done of the Game Master Academy, and of course, so many more to go. So, if you have been watching and listening to the series so far, and it's helped you, then great. That's what it's here for. Now, feel free to ask questions and, jump on in with anything that you want to add in. It's completely open dialogue here as I go through these various topics of communication. Let's see. In terms of updates for the channel and everything going on in the Paladin's archive side of the world, last night was the last episode of Gop's Petulance. It actually was really fun. The group was absolutely amazing. Kat, Minty, Grace, and Will, they played their characters phenomenally and definitely was a ton of fun. It is an adventure that I am publishing called Gop's Petulance, and it is almost near completion. I have to put some final pieces together, and then it'll be ready to put on the Roll20 and Foundry marketplaces, and so I'll have that done by next weekend. And I've been working on that adventure for quite a while. Actually, I did a lot of playtesting last year, and then I did playtesting this year for this run, and I'm really looking forward to releasing my first adventure online. It's actually a pretty big feat for me. It'll be my second book. I've released a supplement before, the Tome of Many Treasures. I had wrote this one not long ago with the Great and Wonderful Dragon on the front, and it's been and I haven't stopped writing since, really. I mean, it's been nonstop. Just a second. Here we go. And I'm looking forward to writing and making a lot more, so that way you all can have really good things to play and bring to your tables. So I'm looking forward to making a lot more content and releasing that to the public. I also have a Patreon as well, and so I will put a link in. A lot of this stuff is available through the Patreon, and also at a much cheaper cost than if you were just get it off the marketplace. So if you've been watching and paying attention and you generally like content that I make and you want to get a copy of the adventure, then by all means, it comes with the PDF, the maps, the tokens, and also a copy of the Foundry key and any updates that come along the way. And so all that for much cheaper than what you would find it in the marketplace. So there you go. Let's see. But today I'm going to be talking about communication, and of course, communication is one of the most major foundational pieces of any TTRPG space, because we're talking, listening, communicating all the time. I mean, it's a game based on textbooks and dice and paper and talking. So naturally, this is going to be one of the biggest and probably most broadest things to talk about. And I think that what I've seen and heard commonly is that people end up having situations that come up in their games that they need help with others. and we'll commonly go to places like Reddit or other places to ask for advice and for help. And sometimes I get really good advice, and sometimes they don't. But regardless, I think that it only takes a little bit of work in order to get ahead of the major curve of society whenever it comes to communication skills. Truthfully enough, I mean, not many people put that much effort or work into bettering their talking and ability to effectively communicate what they're trying to say to others. And so it only takes a little bit of work to get ahead of most people, and then even with that little bit of work will take you much farther in anything, even beyond D&D. I mean, job related, I mean, making a very good relationship with others, with friends. I mean, these are things that are very essential to life. I mean, having to work with and talk with others is almost unavoidable in our society. So let's start from the very beginning. So whenever it comes to communication, and I will take this down to the most basic fundamental here with it, is I think that before even talking with anyone, the mindset going into a conversation or a game really makes a humongous difference. And so what I mean is, if I am coming into a conversation, or I'm talking with someone and I'm tired, or I'm not really receptive, thinking about a million other things, then my ability to listen and communicate back effectively is going to be very impaired. Rightfully so, because I'm not really paying attention to what the other person is saying or doing. And I'm not listening to the message that's being sent to me so that I can then communicate back effectively. So that's one thing, is of course having a conscious effort to know where our energies and our mindset is at before talking with anyone. But even if that was okay and the energy was fine, I think that there are a couple of mindsets and a couple of frameworks that work well, and a couple that don't work as well whenever it comes to communicating with others. And so there are a lot of inconveniences, I would say, that happen in life. And sometimes, I mean, at least I've seen and heard, people will, hello, hi Valley, hope you're doing pretty well today. I'm talking about communication for D&D, and I just started, so hope you're having a great and wonderful Sunday. And where was I going? So there are a lot of inconveniences that can happen throughout life, and one of the things that I think get commonly misconstrued or like misunderstood is relating things to ourselves that maybe other people are doing, when it really has nothing to do at all with us or geared towards us. And so there's this set of there is this word called hand-lawns razors. Doing well now. Oh, good. I'm glad that you're doing great. Glad to see that you are doing great. Hope that your Sunday is going to get better, and that, you know, now that you're here, we can have this nice comfy talk about talking. But hand-lawns razors. So hand-lawns razor, essentially what that is, it essentially explains that oftentimes people don't intentionally do things to try to harm others. Sometimes there's just a lot of, like, they're not being mindful about something, or something out of their control, or just like a genuine mistake. And so I think, like, a good example, the separation of characters attacking each other and players attacking each other can get so confusing in the heat of the moment. That's true. Yeah, the separation of characters, that is very true. I have had players that were really good at role playing, and it almost seemed like they were blurring out into real life, but it ended up not being the case. And but it's good to talk about those things. If there is any sort of doubt, approaching someone, I think, is the best way to clear that up, especially afterwards, because then you get into the problem of potential bleed. And bleed is whenever you have feelings that go beyond the table and they linger. And it's all bleed for a reason, because you're bleeding, this constant feeling of emotion, and the only way to cure bleed is to talk about it. So so if that is happening and people are feeling things between sessions, then, or if you're the one feeling things between sessions, then the only way to get rid of it is to either, one, leave the table, or two, talk to that person directly. And talking to the person directly tends to be the better option, especially when you can't do voices. Ah, yes, I see what you mean. Yeah, that can get a little mixed whenever it's the same voice that they're speaking and role playing with. But what was I saying earlier? So I was talking about Hanlon's razor. So Hanlon's razor essentially explains that a lot of things that people do aren't intentional. Like, there's probably very, very, very few people out there that are out to make someone their project, and by that I mean like they're intentionally trying to make someone's life worse. Very, very, very rarely is that ever the case. And so a lot of things seem to be more hey, hot take, bad voices are better than good voices. You know, I think that I agree that any sort of voice is good. At least trying to attempt to make a voice, you know, that's always good too. And I don't think I've ever met a group that's ever made fun of someone else. Oh, okay, well, made fun of me because I intentionally making a very goofy voice, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone make fun of someone else for making a bad, quote unquote, bad voice, right? But I think all voices are good. Now, it doesn't matter if it's good or if you miss the mark just a little bit. You know, just dive right on in. But I can barely pronounce prestidigitation in my normal voice. I can understand that. That's a hard one. Is a voice actor. Oh, nice. You're a voice actor. That is fucking amazing. I would love to hear some of your stuff. If you have anything you want to link, I would be more than happy to listen to it sometime. But that's amazing that you're a voice actor. Did not know that about you, Bildo. That's awesome. So where was I at? Hanlon's razor. So make a character that can't pronounce it. Yeah, make a character that intentionally just mispronounces things. Like, says all the syllables with the wrong accents, right? Okay. But where was I at? So Hanlon's razor, a lot of things that people do, even though they might seem malicious, aren't intentionally malicious towards us. And so that's one good framework to have, is that most times people are going through the world and they're doing things that they don't know affect other people, but they're not intentionally trying to make other people's lives worse. Sometimes it's just coincidence or mindlessness. This gets seen a lot at work. Whenever people are complaining about, oh, this person forgot to do X, Y, or Z, or they did X, Y, or Z, now it's putting more work on me. Well, they probably don't know that they are putting more work on you. And so that's when it's good to have a conversation about it and be like, hey, you know, like, this is what I've seen, and this is causing me to do more work on my end. And they might not even know that they were doing something to make your life like unintentionally harder. Hanlon's razor, the 4-year-old asking about your appearance isn't being judgy, usually. Usually, right? It's like, why is your shirt so dirty? Yeah, toddlers are very brutally honest. But it's not that they're trying to be. They're just they just manage to pick on the right things. Why is there food between her teeth? Oh, whoops. Probably shouldn't have brought that up, kid. I look like a bear. Kids flee for me. Fair. That is very fair. But one of the other things that I think that also affects a lot of communications is assumptions or heuristics. So if you're not sure what that means, it's a big word. That means that your brain really likes to be as lazy as possible in all the best and worst ways. So your brain has these natural connections that try to make it so that you don't have to overthink everything that you see. If I pull up this pen, then you can tell immediately that it is a pen. You don't really have to think about it, just know it, right? imagine you having to go through life looking at everything as like, what is this? Oh, it's, you know, it's this and that. Oh, it must be, let me look it up in the dictionary. That would be a lot of processing. So your brain cuts that short with heuristics. And so if I pull up a pen, you know it's a pen. If I pull up a book, you know it's a book immediately. Most often, if you are touching something wet, you probably know it's probably some sort of liquid. And the same thing goes for people. Your brain likes to make these really fast assumptions about people, and that's where unfortunately stereotypes kind of get drawn from, is from heuristics. And you know, love our brains, but they sometimes make life a little hard as well. And so understanding that, you know, that there's going to be certain assumptions that can be made or created from ourselves onto others is also something to be aware of. And so it's kind of what I was mentioning earlier, like depending on your mindset, like whenever you go into a conversation or into a session talking with someone, whatever it is that you are going to assume from the other person or the session, it's most likely going to happen. And it's like called a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so if you're going into a session thinking, oh man, this is going to be absolutely fucking terrible and I'm going to mess it up, well, it's probably going to be fucking terrible and you're going to mess it up, because your brain and your body likes to act in congruence or in similarity to what it is that you're thinking. And so if you're thinking that this is going to be an awful session, well, you're probably going to make it an awful session, because you don't want to be wrong with what you're thinking most times. And so a lot of these assumptions can be very detrimental to us and to those around us as well, if we're not like thinking through things in a proper fashion. The same thing happens whenever we assume things based on, well, unfortunately, because of heuristics. And so if I see someone, or if we see someone that just walks in and they are probably very messy, they haven't brushed their hair, they're really unhygienic and they smell bad, we're probably going to think a couple of things about them. Whereas if we saw someone that had just come in and they're really prim and clean and they look like they're about to go to a wedding, we're probably going to assume something else, like, oh, like you dressed up for something, clearly, right? As opposed to the other person, you wouldn't say that the other person dressed up to go anywhere. And so it's these assumptions that we have that sometimes get us in trouble, and we have to be careful, almost to like not play into them too hard. Sometimes they're correct, like half the times they're not correct about what we're thinking about others. And so being very mindful of what it is that we're thinking going into something is extremely important. It also can be very hard, because it can be hard to know what it is that your assumptions going into something are, or what it is that you're feeling going into it, because we're just kind of feeling it. And it can be very hard to sit down and be honest with yourself and be like, what is it that what energy am I giving off going into this session or talking with this person? And what are the things that I'm assuming? And I think that that one common way I think to kind of describe this modern day is vibes. I think I've seen this a lot, especially on TikTok and Reddit, where they're like, he didn't do anything wrong, the vibes were just off. That's an assumption. That's typically a bad one too, especially when you haven't talked with the person. And I think that I've seen like a couple YouTube videos of like people being canceled for having bad vibes, but they didn't intentionally do anything wrong. The vibes were just off. And so that's a bad assumption to have of someone. I've been told I have good vibes. Good vibes are good. You know, if someone is really smiley and they're having like a uppity, you know, sort of attitude, and they're probably gonna have good vibes. And so I think a lot of the bad vibes come from like associations with some form of like combination of appearance, tonality of voice, and then typically something related to some sort of like cultural, like if it's some sort of like either religion or sometimes politics as well. Making assumptions fast is a great survival strategy. You aren't gonna survive long if you spend 10 minutes wondering if the big furry creature at shoulder height wants for food or skittish. This is true, yeah. And so so whenever it comes to surviving, yes, absolutely, it does make our brain think fast. But today we're talking about conversations in modern day, and so heuristics do tend to get in the way quite a bit sometimes, and if we're not careful, we don't put our foot in our mouth before we say something, we can get ourselves in trouble with other people, unfortunately. And so even when the system doesn't like to adjust even when proven wrong. It's not. Heuristics can be fixed. And a lot of the things with heuristics that I do see that are fixed tend to relate to more of the cultural stuff. For example, I knew this guy in the military that was really, really super right wing. I used to be in the Marine Corps, lived in Hawaii. He used to hate Hawaiians. He was very, very anti like anything not white. But after like a year or 2 or 3, he actually grew to love Hawaii, and he like complete 180. So, but his heuristics literally changed backwards. He's, instead of seeing them instantly as enemies, he started seeing them more as friends. And so that's an example of a way that you can change them. But it's a matter of, well, it's a matter of exposure, and then like seeing the truth in the matter, and then having those neurological connections change. And so heuristics can change, and a lot of what will change and form stronger connections are things like emotional responses. And so like if we had encountered a bear before, we're probably going to react a lot more intensely the next time that we see a bear, only because the first time that we met a bear probably was not very great. Hopefully it was just a very distant encounter. But if you did see a big furry animal that's shoulder height and that's about to kill you, the next time you see it, you're probably going to react a little bit more aggressively, and that's thanks to the amygdala. So you can thank your amygdala and hippocampus for that, for emotional creation and storage. And I used to be a neuroscientist, so I do know a lot about your brain. So these things that we do subconsciously make, some of them are a little bit harder to replace than others. That is very true. And some are probably never going to change. Like, we're going to probably always assume that things that feel wet are probably a liquid, right? But things that relate to culture and people can change over time. So I don't think that it's necessarily true to say that assumptions can't change. I think that they can. It's just a matter of exposure and the right nudges in the right direction and positive feedback. Brain, spider helps eat insects. Also brain, I know, friend, but so whenever you have this probably has happened to at least some of us. Have you ever felt like there was something crawling on your skin and you already flicked it off before you even looked at it? That actually is not a brain reflex. It's a spine reflex. It doesn't go to your brain. It only goes to your brain afterwards. So there is a signal that gets sent up into the spinal cord. And what it does is that depending on the sensation and depending on what type of nerve ending it hit, there's different types like A, B, C, D. It will send a reflex back down, and it will tell your body to just flick it off without even knowing what it is. And so that's why, and then only after that you get the jolt of like, hey, we're in danger. And then you start to look, and then you start to assess what it was, because you don't know what it is before you look at it. So it's actually not your brain, it's your spine that actually does that. So interestingly enough. But anyway, I digress. I'm digressing here. I could talk about neuroscience all day. I used to teach, and I got my national certification, and I made a test for people to get certified for stroke. That's all in the past now. I don't do that anymore. Now I do D&D for a living. Completely different walk of life. But before talking with people, talk about hand-ons, razors, and assumptions. Those can get us in trouble. They can also help us as well. The other thing is curiosity as well. And so if we want to improve the way that we communicate with others, there has to be at least a little bit of curiosity about the other person. And I do mean genuine curiosity, not forced curiosity. So like wanting to know more about someone else's character because you just want to know. Or maybe we want to have a better relationship with me and the other players, and so I'm going to be genuinely curious about what it is about their lives. And so something that I started doing a lot is that I write down little facts about people, like birthdays. I'm like, oh, this person went to like a niece's t-ball competition or like this person likes this or that. And so it might seem mundane, but I try to write all these tiny little facts about people down, because then I can bring them up later, because it just shows that I care and that I'm genuinely curious. And so and I have this, I have like notebooks of it, of like little facts that I write down, or on my Obsidian, which I keep track of now. And it's really helped a lot. And so whenever there's like a birthday that comes around or something, or maybe it's like their mom's birthday, I'm like, tell your mom happy birthday for me. And it's just like, wow, like you remembered that. It's like, yeah, I wrote it down, of course. So it's like, it kind of shows, one, that I am curious, and two, that I do care. And that ends up actually bringing you together a lot closer to others. And whenever you have that bond or relationship that's strengthened because you spent some time to remember something, then it helps. It helps a lot. And then, you know, you can then have a better relationship with another person, whether it's a player, DM, or anybody in life, and just show that you put in that little bit of extra effort just to get much more of a gain between both of you and get closer together. Let's see, Valley, you said, I find it funny when that system breaks. I've had a moth on me. Fully processed it was a moth, was fine. 2 seconds later, what the fuck is that? Oh my god, while still consciously aware it's just a moth. Yes. Yeah. So that is your body, because even though your brain might know it's a moth, because of the way that nerve signal gets sent to your spine, it doesn't go to your brain. It goes to your spine in the back, and so you don't. It's just a reflex. Just so you can't really do much about it. You know, like whenever the doctor has a little hammer and they're like hitting certain parts of your body, and you just like kick your leg up. Same thing. You can't really help it. It just happens. And it's unfortunate for that moth, because that moth probably was a really pretty moth. Dang. I love moths, especially the fuzzy moths. They're so cute. They're really, really cute. Okay, let's see. So curiosity. Yeah, so curiosity will get you a long way with others. Mostly because, I mean, it's gonna be almost like a drawing force. It's like you're drawing yourself to them as much as them to you, because they see that you're interested in them. And us as people, we're very self-interested. We are. We all talk about ourselves all day, all night, all about us, me, us. That's just how people are, right? They're very self-biased. We're very self-biased creatures. It's just a fact about us. And so being able to draw upon that and be like, wow, you know, there's this, you know, thing about maybe you had someone that was like genuinely just wanted to know a lot about you, and they were like listening, right? And they were talking and they're, you know, engaging with everything that has to do about you. And they're like, oh, you know, this person's listening to you and your life story. I mean, it's the same thing, but think about it the other way around. You're the person that's engaging someone else about their life story. And so you could do the same thing in game with characters as a game master or a player, where you are engaging through NPCs or your player character about another player character's story, because it's just, you know, same thing, just one step removed, right? Like in game as opposed to out of game. That will actually help a lot to bring out a lot of these deeper characteristics and also personality traits that we maybe didn't even think of. Because whenever you start to approach roleplay in this like this is me and I'm this character mentality, then you can then kind of like ease into that character a bit more. You also tend to understand them a bit better too. Maybe there are things that, like, you know, never really came up, like especially if it's a face-to-face, whether it's like over cam or in person. You can like in character kind of like cue into these details, and you can really move in closer into the character space, to the mindset, by having these conversations in first person, like asking another character like, wow, you know, I realized this last fight, you know, that you're really good at, maybe they're a druid, that you're really good at casting Ice Knife, you know, where did you learn how to do that? Who taught you how to do that spell? And then, you know, maybe that could be an interesting conversation, because then you can learn more about their character, and just something that completely comes up on the spot, and it'll add just that much more depth to even something that maybe we, you know, might seem as like, oh, it's just a spell, but to that character, they spent time to learn that spell. Why did they choose that spell for the day? You know, there could be a depth of understanding that maybe we have never really gone into before, and that could add a whole other element to your roleplay and to your game, by just being able to have that natural curiosity about everything or anything about another person or a character. And so that is a really good thing to bring into a table, and definitely something that could help a lot is having that curiosity factor of like wanting to know as much as possible about someone else's character. And as a result of you being naturally curious of them and their character, they're going to be curious back about yours too. Because it is like, I learned ice knife because it helps keep the raw fish cold while making sushi. That's good. Oh, I love it. That's such a good joke. Thank you. That's a good laugh. Thank you. Oh man. I get it. It's because you're cutting sushi with a knife and it's cold. That's awesome. I love it. Hold on, that made me tear up a little bit. That was really funny. Gosh, what was I was talking about? Sorry, that was genuinely really funny. I was talking about the curiosity factor. So, yeah, being curious about someone else's character will make them curious about your character. It's almost like whenever you give, and 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 you give, like eventually other people will want to like kind of partake in that as well, and it's that bond that'll strengthen. And it'll take a little bit longer with some people than others. But like whenever you're like, if you have someone that is really quiet in the group, this is where it works really well. Because I mean, I hear these things like, you know, I have this really quiet player at my table. What do I do? How do I get them to roleplay more? Ask them about their character, in character, and be like, hey, you know, like just about mundane stuff, because it'll get them to think in that character's mindset about the mundane stuff. And it really brings people down to earth a lot, because now you're asking about things that we really don't think about, and a lot of things that we actually take for granted, like, you know, like the sun being outside, or there being, you know, vegetation or flowers, you know, like stop to sniff the flowers, or stop to ask people about stuff that is mundane, like things like what is your favorite seasoning? Probably salt, most likely, or maybe it might be something else, like what's your favorite cantrip? Why did you pick that? Why is it that you chose to be a druid? Was it circumstance, or was it like something else? Like you're really trying to approach people or players or their characters, especially if they're quiet, in a way that you're having to force them to think about these things that maybe they didn't think about before. And so myself, I tend to kind of help mitigate some of these problems ahead of time. I have this like 12-page character backstory form that I give people. I'm like, here, fill this out, make your character. And it's 12 pages because there's just a lot of references in the back, but it is very thorough and asking a lot of these things so that they can make a really good character. Because a lot of the problems that I have with new games especially is that this is the first time that they're meeting and they're testing the waters about what's okay, about what's not okay. But also, like, if they don't know their characters that well, they're not really know what to talk about. And it can be really hard to roleplay a character that you don't know. And so making the character ahead of time helps. But also you can make that character in the game as well, but it is harder to roleplay a character that has got nothing. So, you know, putting a little bit of extra work ahead of time helps players a lot. And so you're a DM and you're having that problem of like, hey, I just have a really quiet group. Try to give them make a document with questions that'll help them have a concept of who their character is before they come to the table. And it'll help that much more. Okay, let's see what you said. It's always nice when mages use a spell for something so mundane, especially when it's something most people think it's a combat spell. It's true. You know, it really adds a lot of usability, right? Not everything has to be about combat. It could be about its various uses in mundane and, you know, utilitarian situations. And I think that adds a lot of roleplay. Absolutely, I agree with that. So, Where was I at? Yeah. Okay. So the next thing is, I think that one of the hardest things that people can do is have true empathy. And I mean genuine true empathy. We were very good at sympathizing, but to have empathy over situation is actually extremely hard. You have to engage and focus in on almost every single element that a person is presenting to you. How their body is moving, how their voice sounds, what tone it is, how they're expressing themselves in the moment, and all of these micro nuances of nonverbal communication and verbal, putting it together and feeling what they're feeling and knowing what they're going through, and then having that empathetic feeling is extremely hard. I know that a lot of people talk about being empath or being very empathetic. It's actually an extremely hard skill to do, and typically it requires so much energy to put yourself in that mindset, to have this one-to-one connection with someone, that it also can be a little exhausting afterwards as well, at least for me. And it can only be done whenever your full attention is being brought onto someone. So if I'm over here writing something, my attention is distracted. I'm not going to be able to empathize. But if I like put down my pen, stop fiddling with things because I have ADHD, and I just focus on the person entirely, then the likelihood that I'm going to be able to have a deeper understanding of what they're communicating beyond just the words is compounded exponentially. And so being able to, when you're playing D&D and you're having those role play moments, put down the book, put down the pen, and listen. And that's why a lot of DMs don't like, the sitting on your phone. It drives me crazy too. It's like you can't really be there and be in the moment talking with someone and then be distracted because you're just giving them half your attention. And we're here, we're spending this time to play this game. So being able to give people your full attention is the very least that you can do. What do you mean you learned Fireball for a 4th of July party trick to save money? That's a good one too. Man, the jokes, they're just so good today. Let's see. So empathy is also can be hard because maybe we lack the experience ourselves to understand what they're going through. And so, it can be very hard to empathize with someone that just lost a family member if we ourselves have never felt loss or grief. That's a very extreme example. Or maybe us ourselves can find it very hard to empathize or truly understand what it feels like what is another thing? To have our house burned down. Another extreme example. But in the smaller scale, I mean, we probably can empathize, eating milk that went bad. Ugh, I mean, that's awful, disgusting. We probably can empathize with that. We probably can empathize with the inconveniences of something breaking right before we needed to use it, and then having to go out at night go get a replacement, and the store is closed. Being inconvenienced is something we could empathize with, right? So there's all these things that we can most likely connect with, and it is those exact things that are really going to put a connection between me and the other person, so that I can then understand what they felt. It might be not in the exact same situation, but empathy is not about having the exact same situation. It's about understanding what they're feeling and validating and being able to know what they're going through because you experience something very similar, or maybe the same thing. And it's more than just understanding. It's also about being able to genuinely show validation to your experiences as well. There isn't much worse than pouring milk into and not realizing until you take a bite. Or being so thirsty you down 5 gulps before the taste hits. Oh no. Oh, bad milk is just terrible. Oh. But empathy will take you a long way, and it can be very, it also can be very hard to try to express empathy in game because I mean, this is a fantasy setting, right? So I don't think that we can empathize being chased down by a dragon. Or having to work for one, or being brought up, or having our brother brought up by an undead lich, something or other. But we probably, and then your stomach starts, oh no. But we probably can empathize, try to do our best to show what empathy would be like, right? Maybe we match the tone of what it is the other person is saying. We try to mimic their tonality in roleplay, and so that's one way that we can empathize in character, is we just mimic or mirror what the other person is showing, almost like one-to-one, because it might not be something that we know ourselves, but hey, I can just, the best I can do is just repeat back what it is that they're expressing to me. So this is all just mindsets before even talking with someone. So the hand-lens razors and assumptions, the curiosity and empathy are all three really great mindsets to go into any social situation, so that way you can try to have the best connections with others. And it's trying to have those really high meaningful connections and moments with others that are really, meaningful connections are meaningful, is what went through my mind. But those meaningful and critical moments are what's going to draw people closer together and draw people closer to you as a dungeon master, as a player, as a person, just because you genuinely care and you're showing it, and other people are going to latch onto that and they're going to love you more for it. Just, we like that. Love is good. So that's all just even before talking with someone. I don't know how it feels to be in front of a dragon or a whale jumping over your robo, but I imagine that the reaction is probably similar. Is that Free Willy? I think that's the Free Willy, right? Like when the whale jumps over the dock, and then I think I saw memes about the whale not being able to make it all the way and squishing the guy on the dock. Or was that Family Guy? I don't know, but I know what you mean. Okay, so the second part, after mindset, after making sure that we ourselves are, mentally engaged or engageable with others, is silence and being able to listen before we speak. I do think that there is a lot to be said in Stoicism. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, there's tons of videos on YouTube talking about the Stoic, this very quiet individual that is watching and listening a lot more and saying as little as possible, or trying to communicate their message in as few words as possible so that they can accurately and concisely communicate what they have to. But it's more about the things that they don't say than they do say when it comes to Stoicism. This is amazing, but part of me acknowledges that this thing could end me in 2 seconds flat by making me flat. Yes, the whale landing on top is not good. So whenever I go into any social situation nowadays, I try to stay as quiet and as silent as I can. Sometimes that can be hard because I have ADHD, so works against me sometimes. Brain, what can you do? But being able to understand what, especially if other people are talking to you first, trying to stay as quiet, silent for as long as you can, and truly listening, and like things are down, you're not messing with things, you're listening to the other person, will get you so much further than if you're like constantly trying to repeat back. And I know that we're taught to do things like say yeah, but I find that that's not really helpful. I find that the times that I'm most engaged with others is when I'm saying absolutely nothing. because I'm not thinking about what it is that I'm going to say next. I'm not thinking about what it is that how I'm going to respond to this. I am genuinely just taking their words in, and I'm listening, and I'm watching what it is, if I can watch them, what it is that they're expressing non-verbally to me as much as possible, and trying to understand what it is that's being told to me and also not being told to me, because it's often the things that are there's a lot more than just the words. There's also the tone, the way that it's being told to us, right? People can say things and then underneath mean something completely different just based on the way that they say it. I mean, like, there's probably like 4 different ways I could say the word fuck, and it can mean 4 different things, right? It's all about the tonality. It's all about the rhythm of it, like how long or short, or the cadence. Is it very rushed? Is it very long and drawn out? Is my voice very low? Is it very high? You know, those are all very different things. It's frustrating when you, all right, let me see. It's frustrating when you're in a social interaction and people say, you shouldn't be so silent, but there hasn't been a 2-second break in the conversation for you to speak. And if there has, the topic has already moved on from what you were gonna say in response to something. Yeah, I can understand that. And that's when, that is also here's the thing with that. Whenever that happens, people are so engrossed in what it is that they're wanting to say that they have stopped listening. Or if you do find a little break and you try to like say something, they'll just continue on. And so whenever that happens, just stop trying to talk and listen, because you'll find often enough that people that are like that, they will tell you a lot about themselves, a lot more than maybe you want to know, just based on what it is that they say in those moments. And so you watch them like a hawk, and you just watch them, and you keep watching and watching and watching, and just see how long it takes for them to notice that you're not responding. Because here's the thing, if you do want to have a conversation, every single time that you try to intercede or say something, they're gonna talk that much longer. But if you stop trying to interrupt in between, you'll realize that the amount of time it'll take for them to stop talking and actually realize that you're not engaging with them anymore, or that are not quote unquote engaging, because they haven't realized that you're just being silent. And maybe you will tune them out eventually if they're just talking on and on and on and on. But they'll realize that they were talking a really, really long time. But if you don't say anything, the amount of time that it'll take for them to genuinely give you a chance to talk is going to be a lot shorter than if you try to intercede. And so every time that you give an yeah, and they're just going on and on and on, you're just going to make it last. So if you just don't say anything and just watch, and if you're able to physically watch them, like over cam, just watch and watch, because it'll get uncomfortable to the other person, and they'll realize that, oh, I'm talking a lot. Yeah. It's one thing to have a conversation by giving room to express your thoughts with others, but whenever it becomes a soapbox where the other person is just going on and on and on and on and on and on and on, it can be frustrating, because we want to talk with them too, but they won't give us a chance. So you just make it uncomfortable. That's really probably the way to politely teach them to talk less, is that you just, that's it. That's all it is. And it's not disrespectful, but it is signaling strongly to the other person that they're saying a lot and that you want to say something too. And I think that for some people that could be a very hard skill to overcome, I do know a couple of people that are neurodivergent, ADHD, autistic, myself being neurodivergent myself, that can talk forever and ever and ever, ever and ever and ever and ever, and it's just normal for them. And so for me, if I do encounter someone like that, I have some sort of like auditory processing problems where I can't have a bunch of words thrown at me. I will just, I can't. I'll just process it out. But I don't want to be disrespectful and not listen. And so I know this about myself. So I told the other person, it's like, hey, I know you're saying a lot, but cut it down a little bit, and that's okay. It's because if it's to the point where they're really just going on, I think that it's okay for you to intercede and be like, hey, let's cut it down on the talking a bit because I'm not getting a chance to speak. And if the other person gets offended at that, probably should find another friend, because that's also signaling that they find their thoughts more important than yours, and that's not an okay message to give to someone. And so that's where a lot of the mindset that I was talking about a while ago really comes in. It's like your mindset going into something has to be that I'm here to talk with someone, not talk to someone. And so if they're going into it with the mindset that they're going to talk to you and not with you, and even if you say something, they're not going to give you a chance and they're doubling down, it's probably not a good thing. And so, and if it's like a repeated multiple thing, the likelihood that or anyone is going to want to talk with someone like that again is drastically much lower. Why? Because it shows that, well, one, they don't really care about listening what it is that you think about. Two, I mean, just the disrespect of like being doubled down after trying to like say like, hey, I'm trying to speak, is not okay. And so, and if this is you, then, and this is the thing that maybe you do, then hey, maybe something to work on. But it is fixable, and that's where a lot of like knowing these things about ourselves and knowing things that how to fix it will really come up a lot, and where a little bit of work will go a long way. And it could be maybe something that we never heard of before. Fair, maybe no one's taught us these things. I can't recall a single class that I had in high school that was like how to have a human conversation with someone else 101, right? That and eye contact were the hard things for me in school. How am I supposed to know you're paying attention by the fact I'm asking relevant questions, staying on topic, and answering when responded to? Do you walk backwards when talking to someone on a hike? Can you not have a discussion looking at the path? How am I supposed to know? Yeah, and so I get that sometimes. I think I get that most often over a voice call whenever I'm not over video, because I think I said before that I don't believe in saying oh yeah, because it's just one more thing that I have to think about doing, whereas if I didn't do it, I'm focusing more on the other person. And so I have heard that they're like, hey, are you listening? And I'm like, yeah, you said all these things, blah 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 blah. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, you match it back. But if they're, I think that just kind of comes from a misunderstanding that silence means we're not paying attention, because we're taught that, to say, yeah, okay. And that's what we're so used to. So whenever we encounter someone that doesn't do that, our assumptions or heuristics will go the opposite way, right? Our assumption of the social interaction is that if someone is not saying something, that they're ignoring us. And it goes back to heuristics and assumptions again. The mindset that you have and the things that you believe might not always be the thing that you necessarily think that it is. Or even if it is, even if they're not paying attention, maybe there's genuinely maybe they genuinely are not paying attention to you. And they're on their phone and they're distracted. And so if they're not interested in having a conversation, that's when I just stop talking, at least on my end. And so if I am meeting up with someone and, or we're out in public with friends or whatever, and I'm trying to have this conversation with them and they're not paying attention, I don't say anything. I have been on dates before where that's how it was. I'm gay, so I go out with men. So where I've been out with a man and try to talk with them, and it's like stonewall, not interested, not engaging, so I just don't say anything, and I just sit there and let them sit in the discomfort of the silence, because only then did just me, or did the screen go gray? Did it? I don't think so. It's okay on my end. Maybe refresh. Hopefully not. Hopefully it did not just go gray. But being able to sit there, silence is the best way to cure people not paying attention. The harder you try, and here's what, so the harder that you try to get someone's attention when they're not paying attention to you, what that's signaling is that, oh great, so the less that I do, the more that they give me. No, that's, you know, that's not a good thing to tell someone. Hey Bildo, hey, thank you for the hearts. Happy Pride, yay, happy Pride. Yes, I am having a Pride game later this month. It's called making the perfect spouse, and it's going to be this witchy cult that they're gonna have to go out and make a spouse, and they're gonna have to gather all these ingredients in order to make the perfect spouse, and it's gonna have a really good wholesome ending. Just for a sec. Okay, well, good to see that you're back for a sec. Thank you so much, and you know, thank you for the lurk. What was I talking? What was I talking about? We're talking about silence. So if I'm intentionally ignoring someone, not that I would, but let's say that I was, and that other person was doing so much more to just get my attention, that rewards me for doing less, and so that's not good. And so that's where a lot of these things like attachment ish, like anxiety attachment, or will put so much more effort because they think that they're afraid of losing someone, and so because they're afraid of losing someone, they will put more effort the less effort that they give, and it creates an imbalance, and you start to see this big shift in amount of attention and effort that one person is giving versus the other, and it creates a really bad situation. So that's you know, have you tried TSL? I'm not sure what TSL is. If you list out the acronym, I might be able to tell you yes or no. I'm really bad with acronyms. I might know what it is, I might not. But where was I going with this? So what I'm going with this is that there are more reasons to stay quiet than to try to say stuff as much as possible. And so this is it's true, like even down to the stoicism, down to a certain point, that the less that you say and the more that you sit and analyze people, and the accurately and more concise you are with your words, the better it is that you're able to understand how things around you are in general, and in the way that people are in relation to you. And you can also fix a lot of problems just by doing nothing at all. I mean, it's as little effort as it is, but also it is what the things that you do whenever you're not saying anything that also kind of cue in these extra bits of wisdom around you. And so I'm listening a lot to what it is that people are saying and not saying as well, especially in response to certain situations. And you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and so, you know, being able to listen before you say anything is imperative, because you are then able to respond to situations just that much better, because you understand what is being communicated to you non-verbally and verbally. So it works out for you well. So as a dungeon master, say less. And I think that there are videos out there that I think I've seen floating around about dungeon masters that use this one simple trick. They say less. It is true, because when you say less as a dungeon master, you give space for others to fill in that space with their words. And not only that, but, you know, if you are a dungeon master that you feel has to like pull. I got D&D. Have a good stream. Bye, Bulldo. Have a good one. If you are one of those people that that does need to pull in people very heavily with a lot of ooh, hold on, sorry, I'm trying to fix my chat here real quick. If you feel like you're having to pull in people very heavily with your words because you feel uncomfortable in the silence, then it might be, this might be like, you know, a little bit of a flag for you to, but like try to say less. And I think that part of the reason for that discomfort can be that we're just afraid of the silence. Like maybe we're afraid. I've heard of dungeon masters that are afraid of having the energy die, but it couldn't be any more not true, because whenever you give so much energy and trying to fill all the empty space, you're actually taking away a lot more than giving. Because there's one of you and there's 4 to 5, 6 players, right? And so giving them the space to fill in with their words and their interactions does so much more than you trying to fill it in with your one singular voice. Not only that, but just the interactions that they have are really fucking amazing. And so I've learned to enjoy just watching them go back and forth, and I'm sitting here like, oh, this is nice. This is really nice roleplay, you know, and take a sip of my coffee. Having an NPC trail off into silence mid-panic shows so much more panic than the screaming itself. Yes, 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 the silent panic, it's true. And the silence walking down an empty, dark hallway makes a boss fight so much more spooky. This is also a really good trick if you're a person that uses music in your game. I love music. As you can tell, I got music playing in the background. Then turn off the music during times where you want to express a very, like, where you want things to feel heavy, like something very dramatic. There is a dramatic entrance. Just turn off the music and don't say anything. Maybe like we had just walked in and we see the king dead on the floor that we didn't expect them to be dead. We're coming back to turn on a quest and they're dead. They've been murdered. Just turn off the music. Don't say anything. And if you're on a virtual tabletop, then you know you can mark it dead and just let the moment speak for itself. Because what people imagine in their head is going to be so much more profound than any words that you can say in order to fill in that space. And so that's one way that you can, you know, accentuate your games a bit better, is that you make certain points of the game a lot more pointed and a lot more dramatic by doing less. It's such a good skill. It really is. Better than just switching it off. Slowly and gradually dim it down until it is off. That's also a thing too. If you on Foundry there is a crossfader. If you are using Foundry and you don't have this, use the crossfader module. It does exactly that. You can crossfade it so that it just like slowly turns off rather than just like an abrupt off, because that also can be very distracting as well. Is that if you just have like abrupt changes rather than a gradual change, it'll actually take a lot more away from the situation. So having a gradual decline and gradual incline in will do a lot better than just cutting it off entirely. If that's not your situation, I only use Foundry, so I wouldn't be able to give you good suggestions for anything else. I'm not sure I haven't used Roll20 in a while either, so I can't give any good ones for that. But if there is a way for you to slowly, gradually, maybe like turn down the volume of things just a tad, especially if it's something like Cernscape, like on your or the Bard app on your phone, then you should be able to just gradually turn it down, and that'll help a lot. So, but yeah, that is a good point, Valley. I was looking at the dog. So here is the next thing that I want to talk about, is validation. There are times a sudden off is fine. Walking into a room with a BBG playing a haunting melody on the piano, for example. Yeah, that could be a sudden thing. Depending on what you're going for, right? I guess that's all it is. Like what sort of like mood is you're trying to do by sudden on or off. So the next thing is validation. So whenever people are talking with others, and especially if they're like showing a lot of emotion, oftentimes they don't want to be told that they're wrong. Let's think about it for a second. If I'm expressing about how I had this dramatic thing happen to me and I'm really upset and how dare they, and what do you think? The last thing that they want to hear is, you know what, babe, you need to check yourself out because you're wrong. No. People want to be validated about what they're feeling and what they're thinking. They don't want to be told that they're wrong. They're never going to share anything with you again, right? So rather, it's more of a thing that as people, we're very self-biased and very self-centered. That's just the thing about us. We're self-preserving, right? Playing and knowing into that ahead of time helps a lot. And it's like a yes and, right? Like in D&D, yes and. Yes, it's valid. What you're feeling is absolutely valid. How dare they? And but what about if have you considered this maybe? Like, yes, we validated your feelings. You are right to be angry. And also, I wonder, like, have we considered this point maybe? And then they're like, okay, people are a lot more willing to listen to things whenever you agree with them and add in a subtle rebuttal. I like that. Okay. Rhymed. Okay. Whenever you agree with them and add a subtle rebuttal, people are a lot more likely to be more convinced about the thing that it is that you're trying to tell them about, especially if it's something that they have an emotional vested interest about. Really good relationship advice, by the way. If you have a friend that has just went through a breakup, they're gonna want to vent about all these things, and then maybe they still have some attachment things they're trying to, but so the way that you can help them best is like, yes, this is terrible. Yes. And these are the things that also that I think didn't help in the relationship too. And it can be a hard conversation to have. Try to tell your friend how maybe some things that they did weren't exactly healthy for a relationship, and in efforts to try to help, and they gotta be wanting and in a headspace to want to receive that kind of advice. Can be difficult, but in terms of D&D, where this kind of comes up is that people have really cool ideas about their backstory. They will write pages upon pages of lore, and some of the RPG horror stories that I've seen consistently regarding invalidating someone is when they bring something and it's rejected or not paid attention to. And that's rough. I mean, imagine you spent all this time and thinking on something and the other person just like dismisses it. Dismissing is an extremely disrespectful thing to do to someone. And dismissing can be done in several different ways. It could be done by not listening to someone, right? I'm being dismissive by being on my phone and not paying attention. That is disrespect. I am being dismissive by not responding to a message. That is disrespect. I'm being dismissive by intentionally saying I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z, even though you sent it to me. That is disrespect. We can avoid a lot of these things by not being disrespectful and validating people in what it is that they're trying to communicate or send to us. And so, and we gain so much more by just saying yes and we lose so much more by saying no, and just no, 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 but, right? If the idea is cool or fun but OP, the answer probably shouldn't be no. It probably should be okay. I'll have to nerf it first. Maybe, it's like, yeah, I think even if it is, I think I would match their enthusiasm. If they're giving something to me and they're like, oh, this is amazing. If you give a very response, then their energy is up here and you're down here. That's still invalidating. And so when they're coming to you up here, if you're just a little bit closer, maybe you don't have to exceed. There's times when you do want to exceed, but not typically when they're bringing character backstories. they're probably going to want to have some sort of validation of like, you know what, this seems like a really cool idea. And I think that in a world where your character was level 20, this would be amazing. And I think that it can be hard to tell new players this, especially because you don't want to break their achy breaky hearts. Not saying that that we need to, but there are right or wrong ways to approach telling someone that their backstory might be a little much. Right? They're a level 1 character. They probably never slayed a dragon before, and I have seen those where it's like, yes, I come from a family of dragon slayers, and I have slayed a dragon at level 1. It's like, there's right and there's good, bad, and great ways to approach that kind of situation. And so I think the best ways are, one, validate that they made a thing. Yes, you nice, great, good job. Here's how we can tweak it to kind of fit the story a little bit better. And that could be a hard conversation to have because they put all that effort in, so they don't want to lose it. But if you're gonna take something away, you gotta replace it with something instead. And so that's the trick, is that you can't just take something away. You gotta put something in that place, because to them, they built this thing. So if you take away a piece of it, they're gonna feel like they just got robbed of something. I mean, they did. You just took something out, right? But you gotta put something back. And so what I usually do for those kind of situations is, if they bring me a character and it's overdone, over the top, over the wall, something, right? And it's not fitting the setting for whatever reason, I'm like, okay, hey, this is a really cool idea. We are level 1. So I think that given the context of the game, probably not very realistic, but I'll tell you what. So I think that I see what you're trying to go for here. I'm validating that they're making a character that is really epic. So how about, instead of us defining that epicness ahead of time, we could do that in game, and they're much more likely to receive that receptively, because that is what D&D is about. And so these players that are newer don't understand that concept sometimes, that you're gonna make that epic story in the game. And so taking it away but then promising them that you're gonna give it back to them in play is actually correct, because that is what happens in D&D, but they might not understand that concept quite yet. And so being able to be like, okay, yes, I made this epic character. I think that it would, given the context of us being level 1 and having all this epic stuff, probably doesn't make sense, but you're going to make your character have these epic moments in the game with the other players. So it's not that I'm taking it away. I want you to get to that point and experience that heroic high. And that is something that we absolutely can't promise as game masters. That's just a natural part of the game. And so I found that conversation has worked for me 100% of the time. Every time. Validating that they made something cool, and then saying, we'll give you this coolness through gameplay. Works out every time. Okay, you slayed a dragon at level 1. What you don't tell anyone is you did so by detonating 50 tons of gunpowder still in the cave. I roosted. Oh my god. So hopefully that is like some good context or some good advice on how to approach the situations. Coming from experience, it's worked for me every time. If not, then tell me. I guess it's all about the approach. And most often, I think also the relationship that you have with the person is also a big part of it. And that relationship is defined by the culmination of every interaction you had up to that point. And so I think myself, I'm also biased in saying this. Maybe I'm not. Maybe a complete dickhead, for all I know. But the culmination of all those interactions that you have with someone do add up. And so for like every one bad interaction, it takes like 10 to 20 good interactions in order to fix it. And the bigger that bad interaction is, the more tax you have to pay to kind of fix that relationship. So it's a lot better to not have these bad moments with others, because that could be very destructive to your relationship. And especially as a professional game master myself, like, I don't want to have a bad relationship with my players. I mean, they quite literally, not that I'm looking at it this way, but me being able to provide an experience is exactly what my job is. And so if I'm taking that away from them, I'm doing my job incorrectly, right? And so being able to understand quite attunely what it is, you pull a cloud from Final Fantasy 7. You claim you did R, but you didn't aren't until you do. Oh man. But what was I saying? But I gained so much more by just being understanding that the other person is, well, one, human, two, able to make mistakes as much as I can, has aspirations like I do, and you know that there's things in their life that they can't control, just like there's things in my life that I can't control, right? There's things that they want that, you know, I can't provide through D&D, and I should try my best to try to provide this experience. And whether or not that aligns with reality really depends on the game style, my game style, and also the game that's being played. And trying to bring in that view closer to the middle, along with everyone else, is what's going to keep everyone together. And so if I have a player that's over here, one player, and everyone else is over here, the likelihood that they're not going to be playing together for very long is very high. And so I need to make sure that everyone is on the same expectations of what the game is supposed to be. And that's where being effective in communication helps a lot. Being able to tell people and bring their vision in with everyone else. The thing is that everyone's going to have a different want or a need for playstyle, what is it they're getting from the game. The more socially intelligent person will realize that not everyone, you know, of course, sees the world in the same way. And so trying to bring in those different visions together to try to create something unique is what makes D&D kind of special. And also it makes sense. I mean, these characters in game are quite literally from different walks of life. So it's not really much more different to say that, yeah, you know, there's a lawyer, an accountant, a surgeon, this guy that, you know, delivers pizzas at a table, and they're all playing D&D together, and they're all from different walks of life. But that's good because they all have different experiences. Not saying that you should aim for that, but what I'm trying to get at is that different people have different life experiences, such as the characters do, and understanding that and bringing it together. Twitch should add a built-in ad alert. Oh no! Here, let's. I got you. There you go. That should help with the ads. Ta-da! No more ads. Oh gosh, what was I saying? I was talking about validating someone, validating people's thoughts and emotions will get you really far with them. We like it when people agree with us. We don't like it when people disagree with us. That only makes a lot of friction and problems. So the more you can agree with someone and give back to what it is that they're feeling and saying, the better. All right, so now I talked about, thanks for the sub, really didn't have to. Hey, you know what? It's the least I could do for someone that's quite generally very, very great to have around. So it's been a pleasure having you here, Velixian. Let's see, so let's talk. Okay, so far I talked about mindset and listening and different reasons why to listen, right? And validation. So now I'll actually talk about talking, your part, you know, your part actually speaking back with someone, communicating. So diving in, after you've gotten all this information from your environment, from the other person talking with you, now you can, at that point, give yourself a moment to think and regroup your thoughts at that time. I genuinely very strongly suggest and agree with the sentiment that we shouldn't be thinking what to say while someone else is talking. because then we're not listening to them. We're thinking about ourselves and not them. So wait until after they're done talking to then think about what to say back. And weirdly enough, I guess it's not really that weird, but whenever you take that moment after they're done talking to think and then say something back, you actually earn a lot more respect from the other person, because they know that you are taking time to formulate something in response. Sorry, in response to what they said. This can only help further what you're trying to do. If somebody doesn't feel comfy doing voices, opinions on something like a roleplay stick, You mean like roleplay stick, like as in like I have the teddy bear, so now because I have the teddy bear, I'm the one talking? Is that a roleplay stick? I'm trying to understand. So I'm trying to understand like the base of the question. So is like the base of the question something like not knowing how to come in on a conversation that's already happening, or finding a hard place to come in on someone else's talking? Is that what the self-differentiate when you or your character are talking? I think that, because I do this sometimes too when I'm just doing normal NPC voices, or when my voice is really bad, I tend to do a mix of third and first person. And so I think if you look at last night's stream, if you want to, I can put a link to my YouTube. There are times when I'm talking as a character named Hernia. Yes, her name is Hernia. But I don't speak in first person. I speak in third and first. And so what I say, it's kind of like you're reading from a book. It's like I say, Hernia says, so what do you think about that? Because then I'm saying that this is what my character is saying. So that's something you could do. You could talk as if you're reading it from a book. Say like maybe your character's name is, I'm just gonna use your name, Valexian. So it's like Valexian says softly, or whispers softly, I don't know if we should do that. Because then you're putting attention that it's not you, but rather your character. So that's one way you could do that. If so that way it's a little bit more natural. If that is not as natural and you want to hold something to say that it's you versus your character, like hold something whenever it is your character that's saying it, that could get a little tricky, because then you gotta mindfully put it down every time. And if you're someone that has like ADHD tendencies or neurodivergent, then it could be a little problematic, because then you just want to play with the thing and then you never put it down. And so that's where that can kind of get you in trouble. And so then like the whole purpose and point of it kind of like kind of like wears off. So I think that more effective ways of speaking are probably speech, putting it in your words. Third person into first person is probably your best go. Just as well, sometimes not everyone is looking all the time. Maybe they are, because it is D&D. As much as I say always pay attention, people are going to be writing notes while things are happening. So if I'm looking at my paper and I'm listening, I probably don't realize that you're holding something. And so that's where you can also kind of get in trouble with that too, if you're depending on having to hold something. I think that even if you're not great at doing voices, even just a slight change in the pitch is enough to kind of signify. So like right now I'm talking in probably I'm more comfortable talking in mid to higher voice, but if I started talking with a little bit more of a lower voice, you could probably tell that this is a different voice than what I was normally talking with, or a bit of a higher voice, right? Or maybe a bit of a lower voice. Then you kind of know my pitch has changed. Pitch is probably the easiest way to kind of differentiate between voices, and it's very doable. You just kind of change up or down where you're talking from your normal. and you don't even have to add nasal or anything else. And so that is also another little trick. Even if it's just a slight pitch change, the human ear is very receptive to listening to these small tonalities, just to help differentiate when you or your character are talking. Yeah. So I think that that my suggestion would be that talking about what your character is going to say in third person and going into first person is going to be your best bet. So that would be my suggestion, only because of all the possible circumstances that could happen in which someone could not know that you're holding something. So like if they're not watching at that moment, right, they might not know you're talking in your character's voice. And so that could lead to a lot of problems where they're like, oh, hey, how did they not know it was me? I was holding the thing. Well, they weren't watching it. So you can't really hold someone accountable to a system when that doesn't really, make sense to use 100% of the time. Also, hi, Solid. Welcome. Hope you're having a good Sunday. I will. And here's my YouTube. I was getting my YouTube link so I could put it up. There it is. And you can also find the previous videos for the Game Master Academy there as well. But that's a good question. That's a really good question, Velixian, because it is one of those things of like you want to have comfort in being able to differentiate between one form and the other, and visual cues unfortunately just don't always work, just because people might be always looking. So whatever you can use for your words probably will be your best bet, so you can kind of get that effect. That's a great question. Okay, so if we're going to be going into a conversation with someone and we're ready to talk, we're done listening, let's talk about small talk. So small talk, I know that it's like the bane of a lot of people's existence, but it's actually a test. And so the test of small talk, it's saying, can I trust this person with bigger information later? That's the trick with small talk. If we are talking, yeah, comfort, distinguishing, and a bit of still allowing immersion. But yeah, I could see third person be preferable. Yeah, talking in third person can still be immersive as well. Now, if we're always wanting to be in first person, then that is where we're gonna have some trouble, because either there's two ways you can do that first person. Either one, you can have the tone shift, but I know that you said voices are not a thing. Or two, you only ever talk in first person, which means that you are never ever talking, not as your character. That is the only way that you can actually have it happen. It's either a differentiation in voice, or you're just always your character. And if that's going to be the case, then you have to stick to the bit and save your questions on things for the other players or for between breaks, which is not preferable sometimes, because we're probably going to have a lot of questions about things in the game. And us as players, we're not always going to be immersed in the character, right? Because we're going to be asking questions about the mechanics and about the world and the environment. So at that point, you're not really immersed. You're talking about the game mechanics, which means your immersion is taken out regardless. So I guess you could go with the character referring to themselves in third person. You could also do that. There are, I have had players play characters that had embodied multiple personalities in one character, so they refer to themselves in third person. So that was a thing. But regardless, there's gonna have to be some give or take or balance between going into a session as your character in first person versus not, right? Because you're going to be asking the DM questions regardless, and so you're going to be having to talk out of first person to engage the DMs. And just based on context, I would think that most times, I think this is going off of just me with experience, I think it'd be a little bit more obvious which context you're addressing people by, whether it's you or the character, right? Because if they're having a conversation about penguins and then you're coming in and you're asking the DM like what something looks like, then I think that'd be a little bit more obvious. but I can also see situations where that might not be as obvious. So the way that you address people is probably going to be your best bet. Like, it's like, hey DM, I have a question. Then, you know, that's not something you would say in game. Or, hey guys, you know, I got a question. Might be also taken as either first, like in character or out of character. So for those kind of like vague terms of like how to address people, I probably would address the person directly, either in character or out of character. So if the player's name is Max, I would say like, hey Max, what do you think about this? But if their character's name is Grug, then I'll say, hey Grug, what do you think about this? Then you are addressing the character as your character as opposed to the player as you, right? Because your character would never address the player, just like your player would never address a character, right? In character versus out of character. Grog want to know what penguin look like. Are pretty? That's also a thing too. So voices are more than just changing the pitch. It also has to do with the combination of the tonality. Like, is it really nasal or is it really deep down in your chest, right? Even if it's the same pitch, I talk a little bit more in the middle. And it's also tempo as well as the language being used. And so I'm talking really fast and I'm talking like this, and you know, and my character's talking like this, then it's probably going to be very different than when I'm only talking like my normal tempoed words. Or if I'm talking extremely slow and I'm playing a turtle, my voice pitch didn't go up or down. All I'm doing is changing the length of my words. Or if I use words that sound dumb or that sound less smart, then maybe that make more sense if my character's character not talk smart or not talk good, right? Like tone of voice didn't change at all, but the words that you use can also express a different character. So it's more than just changing the voice. It also can be tonality. Are you talking in your head, talking in your chest? Words being used, as well as the cadence or how slow or fast the words are. So you use those different combinations in order to make personalities. And so if you have a character that speaks really slow, that doesn't talk very smart, then that's going to be very different than probably you with your normal voice. So that's how you can differentiate. So there's some tips if you want to try to increase your immersion with your character some more. Let's see. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that is very helpful for you and trying to help, because I see like I just based on the questions that there's a little bit of miscommunication at the table and maybe a little bit of worry. So hopefully that will help a little bit better in trying to differentiate and like alleviate some of that miscommunication, and hopefully the miscommunication hasn't led to anything profoundly problematic at the table. So hope that helps. Okay, what's next? So okay, Orca. So I was talking about small talk. Small talk is a way for people to test others if they are safe people to speak with. Might sound a little funny or weird, but it's true. So basically it's me, if I'm doing small talk with someone or someone is doing small talk with me, it's basically an invitation. It's an invitation to be like, is this someone that I could find trustworthy to have a conversation with? Will they listen to me despite the fact that it's small talk? Or will they be dismissive of my topics, whatever it might be? And so that's whenever they're talking about things that might seem very, to us, maybe they might seem insignificant, but then also that goes back to step number one. We should be curious about what other people have, you know, is going on in their life, because this is something that's important to them. Might not be important to us, but hey, they're communicating that this is something important to them. And so it's a test of saying like, hey, I'm bringing this thing up and it might be mundane, but I'm trying to talk with you, and this is basically my way of being like, I want to take a step into your world of talking with you, and you're either going to reject me or accept me, right? And the acceptance is that you engage back with it. And if you don't engage back with it, they're not going to want to talk to you. And that can be bad, because then you shut yourself off from a lot of opportunities. And so rather than you be like, I don't like small talk, realize that it's not about the small talk. It's about them opening up to something more. I think that there's a lot of circumstances where people maybe have not had a good experience talking with someone. And so trying to find a way to test the waters, especially people that are more anxious, is very vital for us to understand that it is not just about the small talk. It's about trust. And if they're talking about the weather and I'm talking about the weather back, it's small, but I am reflecting back the conversation. But these moments of small talk are exactly the best moments that you can just envelop someone in to have a great conversation with. Because yes, it's like I'm knocking on your door, I open the door and I let them in, right? So how you do that is with something called Orca. And so every single person on this planet has an origin, how it is that they became the person they are. They are just something that they like to do recreationally. There's things that they love. Maybe they love to watch YouTube videos. So what do they like to watch YouTube videos about? A career. What is it that they do for work? What is it that they do for a living? Or what is it that they're working on if they're in school? And there are aspirations, right? There's goals that they have. Orca. Origins, recreation, career, and aspirations. Four words. And so whenever someone engages me in small talk, that's my like, ooh, they're knocking on my door and they're saying, hey, talk with me. So I'm like, okay, cool. So then they, whatever it is, I reflect back. It is, they're like, hey, talk about the weather. Like, okay, yeah, the weather is really good. Also, hey, then at that point, I do one thing. I talk about 3 things about myself. And every single time that, especially if I'm talking with someone that's very, very cloistered or very anxious, the more information I can give to the other person to latch onto, to kind of relate back to me, the more likely that they're going to be able to have a good conversation and open up about something. So I always talk about 3 things whenever meeting someone and they're like engaging me in small talk, is that I bring up 3 things and I typically choose a different thing for each one of those different categories: origins, recreations, career, and aspirations. And so I typically will say something like, they're like, hey, how's the weather going? We're like, hey, the weather's going fine. And also, I streamed the Gob's Petulance last night. It was amazing. That's one thing, right? That's something that I do for a living. And I've been working on this book, and I'm gonna release it in this next week for the Gob's Petulance. So I've been doing a lot of writing, right? Aspirations. And and afterwards I played a little bit of Minecraft with my friends. Recreation, right? So I did play Minecraft last night. So those are like, already like all they did was ask about the weather, and in return I gave them 3 things. I streamed D&D. I'm writing this book to publish, and also I play Minecraft. So now it's the other person's turn, and not only that I agree with about the weather, but now they have all this information, and they're gonna, if you have similar interests, they're gonna cue in on one of those 3 things. And if they don't, then they're gonna say, oh, that's cool. I maybe never got that into D&D before, or maybe don't know this or that. So then that's like an invitation of like, hey, now I can talk about my hobbies with you. And it could be that the other person is maybe not knowing how to respond. And so sometimes taking on that brunt of the conversation can be a lot. But that's where a lot of like tuning in and listening to the other person and as you're talking kind of comes in. Because as we kind of said before, if I'm the person that's just talking and I'm not leaving room for them to talk, they're not going to want to talk to me either. So whenever there is this back and forth and a lot of the weight is put on me, I make sure to mindfully leave room for the other person to respond. Otherwise, they're not going to want to talk to me again, right? I've learned it's less small talk that I don't like and more the phrasing, the weather seems nice, just feels so much better than how is the weather? Like it's sunny and warm, but not overbearing. What do you want? Especially as an intro to a conversation. Yeah, and it's those, the small talk, it's, you can take advantage of it. And that's the thing, like, it's all about perception. A lot of people don't like small talk because they feel like it's talk that doesn't go anywhere. But if you view it that way, remember, self-fulfilling prophecy, the way that you go into a conversation or go into something with assumptions is how you're going to end up going through with the conversation. And so the self-fulfilling prophecy that small talk is bad means that all your small talk is going to be bad. So rather than viewing it as bad small talk, view it as an opportunity for you to share and make a new friend with someone. That is a much better and much more positive viewpoint than just, you know, heuristics of or assumptions of small talk is bad, small talk is uncomfortable. It's because we're trying to make something from very little. And so I try to make a lot from very little, or try to be very positive with my interactions in those situations. And that's why I try to include three random facts about myself and see if they latch on. And you know, most times they do, and sometimes these people don't. It could be that I don't have very much in common with these people. And you know, and that's okay, because it's test, right? It's a test of, is this someone that I want to talk with later? Because I don't know them, or maybe me, like maybe I also throw that test out too, where I will, like if I'm at a con and they're dressed up like, hey, you know, you have a really great outfit, how long did it take you to make that? Maybe they were asked that a million times, but you know, just some simple things that will invite people to having a dialogue and viewing it as a opportunity rather than something to dread makes the biggest difference. Though I guess that case depends on if you're talking to somebody in another area or somebody to not fight free from you. Yeah, I suppose so. There is a lot of different introductions that people will come up with, and people will draw upon what they know, right? So like me, I mean, I think that I'm very public now. At least I would think. I mean, of course, I got my face on the internet. I'm here. So I think it would be very natural for someone to be like, hey, how are your streams going? They might not know what my streams are at. They just know that I stream. I have had that conversation before. People are like, yeah, how is your streaming? And, you know, they've never watched a single one of my streams. And that's okay. But that's, you know, an invitation to a conversation and the way to make a friend. So view it as an opportunity is really my takeaway on it. And using Orca, origin, recreation, career, and aspirations as your way to make a new friend. So the one thing that I really want to touch on a lot with communication is self-awareness and reading the room. I think that we've been talking about it a little bit here and there, right? You know, Valley, you know, I think, you know, we've kind of been talking about, at least I've been talking about self-awareness and trying to understand the space and what is going on around, right? Like, for example, if the other person's not listening and you just stop talking. But there's something called the curse of intelligence, or the curse of knowledge. Maybe it sounds familiar to some of us, where the more that we know, the more that we think other people know what we know, and that couldn't be any more false. And it's a heuristic. It's a very bad one. Unfortunately, it's one that is just driven into our brains, that we assume other people know what we know, and that's not true at all, unfortunately. So now there's something called Johari's window, and it's like a Punnett square. And there are basically two categories to it. Well, four. There's things that other people know. There's things that other people do not know, right? Those are two categories. There's things that we know, and there's things that we don't know. And so the things that other people know and the things that we know are things that are open, right? So for example, I think that we can probably say at this point, like, hey guys, I got a secret. I'm a Twitch streamer. You know, that's not a secret, right? That's very open information. You guys know that, I know that. That's not secret. That's open. That's, you know, it's very obvious. I got a beard, you know, that's openly something that you could probably see, right? Or, you know, I probably know that I have a beard. If I don't know, that'd be a bit of a problem. The curse of knowledge is knowing you can't worry about prions. You probably don't have if you don't know what a prion is. Oh my god, I know what a prion is. So funny you should bring that up. So I stream a game on Mondays called Rappan Athuk, and it is a here. Let me bring out the book. Did I mention that I was a neuroscientist before? I used to teach at university, and I used to work in the neuroscience ICU. And the prions, like Creutzfeldt-Jakob or like mad cow disease, is actually the whole basis of Rappan Athuk. And so this is Rappan Athuk. It is a mega dungeon sandbox adventure written by Frog God Games, and it is great. It is an old style adventure, like 3.5. A lot of like kick in the door, rob, fight some monsters and get some loot, and it's really difficult. And so I stream that on Mondays, but with a twist. So the players, there's 6 of them, and the viewers are the 7th player. And I have created a bunch of Python coding called milk magic. And so how it works is that there is milk generated by the hour, and the viewers can trade in their viewer points to buy buildings like cows, factories, milk maidens. They'll produce milk by the hour. And for every 1,000 bottles of milk, the viewers can use milk magic in order to cast magic, to either give the players 10 inspirations or like cast cure wounds or bless. It's really fun, actually. And the game is meant to be impossible. Oh, thank you for the hydrate. The game is meant to be not possible to beat without the viewers helping with their milk magic and the production of milk. I accidentally left the milk on last night, and now we got over 9,000 milk. Oh, geez. So, but I definitely recommend watching it. Where we stream it on Monday evenings. It is at 8 p.m. EST, and we've done 18 episodes so far, actually. And if you want the full playlist, I will put the full playlist here. Here it is. I definitely recommend it. It's really good. It definitely is really good. And the later episodes, I've fixed. It took me some time to get the coding together and the UI, and I'm still working on the UI a bit. But definitely the more recent episodes are very good. The story is so spicy. I definitely do recommend it. Looks back in conversation. But does the milk sour? The milk does not sour, but the whole basis of prions and why this is related is that the milk in the game is infected with mad cow disease. And the cows in the game have been freely distributing this milk to everybody in order to genocide humans. And they're just not finding this out after all the humans have already drank the milk. And so now all the humans are going to die from mad cow disease unless the party is able to stop it by curing their mad cow disease. The only way to cure mad cow disease is to burn the body, by the way. You can't just bury it. The prion exists. You gotta burn the body in order to destroy the prions. Isn't that awful? Ugh. Anyway, neuroscience. So, I was talking about the Johari's window. So, the things that are known to us... Sorry, the things that are known to others, but not known to us, we're blind. Cure mad cow disease with happy cow syndrome. There you go. Happy cow. And so if we don't know something about ourselves, but other people do, for example, like, I probably say the word like and a lot, and I know that I do, but I didn't know that at first. But other people did. I was kind of blind to that to myself. Maybe there's something in my speech pattern that I was not aware about, and it is something that is offending someone. That has happened before. A long time ago in high school, it was someone that was from India and very religious. I was doing something. I was giving them eye contact, and it was very disrespectful to them, and I didn't know. And so that's an example of something that's hidden to me but known to them. So I didn't find out until months later. Like, oh, I'm sorry, I should not look you in the eyes. Okay, let me look off somewhere else. That took me a while to get used to. Oh, geez, look at that! Look at all these bots. Woo! All right, and that is a ban. Ew, bots. They're not even Autobots. I know. Thank you for the views, though, bots. I guess. Crazy. Okay, so what was I saying? I was talking about Johari's window. Okay, so the things that are unknown to others, and unknown to ourselves are hidden, which means that these are things that we know about ourselves that we don't share with other people. And the things that are unknown to ourselves, unknown to other people, are the things that we don't know. That could be a scary situation to be in. So why is this important? Because whenever it comes to storytelling, we need to be careful about what information that we have told the party, and also the player characters themselves need to be mindful about what they do know in game versus out of game. And that's where a lot of like note taking will really save your life, right? Writing your notes down of what it is that certain characters do and don't know. I have made the mistake many times of telling things that I thought the characters knew, only to spoil the story because I didn't know that they didn't know. And that's the curse of knowledge, baby. So trying to be careful of Johari's window of what it is that they do know, what it is that they don't know, and the things that they don't know, because if they do find out, it's just going to throw them off. Is very imperative as a game master. And we need to be very mindful of that. Also, just in everyday speech in general, what it is that we're telling people about ourselves. The easiest life to live is the one that's the most genuine, right? The one we're not having to pretend to be someone else. I would say that I live that kind of lifestyle very well. I don't pretend to be someone I'm not. What you're getting on stream is how I'm going to act off stream. I'm not putting on a persona. I'm not sitting up here trying to act pretty and trying to get likes and views. Not at all. Very genuine, this is just me, right? Very easy for me to just be me, whereas trying to put on a mask and be someone else whenever the camera is on. You'll find more often than not that I'll be very honest on stream sometimes. Unfortunately, sometimes a little too honest about certain situations, especially if it's something that I'm like, okay, let's stop doing this, let's continue forward from there, etc. But nonetheless, I think that there is a lot to be said for just being honest and genuine and not having to work very hard in order to try to just communicate who you are to other people. And I think that if there is this major disparity between, hey, this is me and this is not me, and every single time that I put the camera on, I'm pretending to be someone else, or as a GM, right, if I'm pretending to be someone else in front of others, especially as a professional, the likelihood that that persona is going to last very long, especially in games, the last multiple hours, is extremely unlikely. And the reason why is that it just takes a little bit for me, if you start to get tired or exhausted, your real self is going to come out eventually. So if you are that person that is, unfortunately, like, you are having to pretend to be someone else entirely in order to just get along, I think that there's a lot to be said there, about that particular situation about yourself. It's like, okay, like, I am not a nice person. It's basically what is being communicated there, right? I have to force myself to be nice to someone. That doesn't seem like a very good mindset to have. And so that just kind of really goes back to like really understanding, like, and asking yourself, why is it that I do the things that I do and say the things that I say, and what does that mean about me? And is that good or bad, right? And good or bad to like whose or what sort of standard? Is it my own standard? Is it the standards of society? And is that fair? These are very hard and critical questions. This kind of goes a lot to like philosophy and really understanding yourself in relation to others. And that could be a very hard conversation to have. And oftentimes that's where things like, I'm going to bring it up, like talking about just going to therapy to have a non-biased view of who you are and your actions and how to get over that really helps. And it could take people years to get over certain things about themselves. Maybe some people are very prideful, or very strong in believing their skills, and then that kind of goes into the realm of arrogance. But also, what if it's not arrogance? The thing about humility is not only knowing your faults, but also knowing your strengths as well. So maybe they're not arrogant at all, but truly have been through that path of success and failure for years to get to where they're at. That's different, right? So there's so many branches that I can really go from here with this. But I think what I'm trying to get down to is understanding really what it is that you're telling other people, what it is they don't know, and making sure to keep tabs of that information throughout the campaign, because you can easily spoil a really major plot point in the game. And also that if you are seeing yourself being represented in a different light than your genuine self, to really cue into that and ask yourself the hard questions. You gotta really want to know, like, why is it that I act different in front of people than who I genuinely am outside of that. I've had a situation playing a druid for the first time where we encountered a rat, and I asked if my character had an idea of its CR. Probably wasn't the best way to word it, as it was more wondering if it was within my character's shapeshift ability. But I do find it as a funny example of one of the cases where it's not something you know, but the character doesn't. One where the character reasonably might, you don't, but you don't. I see what you mean. Like, is this a creature that my character could potentially shapeshift into, right? Yeah, I see what you mean. That's a weird one, because our characters don't know any concept of mechanics, right? And so unfortunately there is this balance between, like, okay, in character you can only immerse so much before you reach that wall of, okay, it's a mechanic, right? It's still a game, so there has to be a mechanic for rule justification. And so at that point you got to come out of the game in order to ask for rule and go back into the game. And that's just TTRPGs. You know, I think that that some of the best systems are the ones that are able to adjudicate rules very easily, and quickly, so you can get right back into it. And also, I don't know if people here have heard about this, and I'm not sponsored at all to say this, but there is this system called DC20, Dungeon Coach. He's on YouTube. I've been seeing a lot of promotion material for it online. It seems to solve a lot of problems with D&D 5e. Might even potentially be the new D&D. And because I'm not sure that the way that Wizards is going is going in a way that people like, at least from what I see online. This is not an editorial by me, just stating what I've seen from others. So check it out. It looks very promising. I've not had a chance to look through the rules myself. I saw that the what his name? He's the Professor Dungeon. Forgot his name exactly. Oh no. I saw reviews for it online. It looks very promising. So go give it a look. I think they're on Kickstarter at the moment. It's called DC20. It's the name of the system. Give it a look. I mean, it looks like it could be a very fun system. But continuing on. All right, reforming yourself. All right, so this is, I think, the last part of communication I'm probably gonna hit on, and then we'll probably hop into just talking about whatever we want. So being able to change in yourself for the better of communication can be difficult, because it requires having a level of emotional intelligence and understanding of where you are now and where you are not, and knowing where you are accurately and where you want to be, and then seeing the steps you got to take in order to get from point A to point B. That's hard. That's hard to do by yourself. It really is. And so that's where having mentors and also being surrounded by people that talk in the way that you want to behave helps a lot, because as people, we learn a lot by mirroring or mimicking others, especially as we grow. And it's no different as an adult. You see someone do something, right? You know how something works. I could probably, I can twist open this, bottle here, and you just see me do it without even saying any words. You could probably do it yourself just by watching me do it. So it's the same way with speech patterns and behavior. It's if you surround yourself with people that behave in a way that you want to behave, then you're naturally going to go towards that direction as well. And it's the same way, even if you don't have people like that in your life, very fair, maybe they're very far, or maybe you live in a place where that's not possible, then listening to people that talk that way on YouTube has helped me a lot. And that's kind of my situation. I live in the suburbs of Texas. I don't got anything close to me, despite me, doxing myself a little bit. Don't care. I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So, but in the suburbs, so, I don't really have that a capability to just go take a walk down the street and, meet up with good old, so-and-so that would be a great person to hang out with all the time. Fortunately, all my friends are online. Would love for that to change, but it's going to take some time. First, I got to develop my game company, Paladin's Archives. And I think that it's going that direction pretty well. And I'm very, very happy to finally kind of be on the upswing of being an entrepreneur, to be able to have these kind of conversations and kind of, I could say, maybe point myself more towards having a valid footing in the TTRPG space. So things are going well, and I'm very happy for it. I'm very enthusiastic for the future. Things can only get better, right? I can understand if it's something more exotic, but I kind of view a case like that as, we have educational cards IRL that give animals stats. Is it too unbelievable for there to be a ranking system in a game for creatures even the common citizen is likely to encounter just heading into their backyard or wood? I don't think that would be too uncommon. I think that there is, I mean, let's take this from a real life perspective. There are very different biological differences, major differences between different types of creatures, right? The biology of a dog is going to be very different than the biology of a whale. Big difference, right? Not only in size, but also in understanding how it is that they're able to function to that size, and the complexity of their anatomy, the things that they do as well. I mean, I imagine that learning how to fly is probably a lot harder than learning how to walk. I mean, this is me talking as a person. Maybe it's not. Maybe to the bird it's real easy, but as a humanoid, I'm probably not going to be able to conceptualize flying it for a while. So maybe there is a ranking system in that effect, right? All right, but continuing on. So, reforming yourself. I think that there is, if you're someone that's in a period where you're wanting to change things about the way that you socialize with others, or maybe you realize that there's a problem, maybe there's something consistent, maybe you realize a pattern, I would tune into that very hard and be very honest and accepting, like, okay, this is a thing that has to change, so now how are we going to change it? And there's a few situations where people genuinely will change. One, they are forced to because of circumstance, such as pain. Two, they have been inspired to. Or three, they have enough information where they want to change. There's a big difference between all three of those reasons to want to change. And if you're in that boat now where, like, maybe you're listening to me talk and this is actually helpful and you're wanting to change a part of yourself, it can be very hard. I mean, as someone that has gone through a lot of pain in my life, 31. So I've been through a lot of things. I was in the military, I've been in the neuroscience, I've had people die in my hands trying to save them. I get it. I've been in a lot of situations, probably lived more lifetimes than probably most people care to. I got gray in my beard now. You know, I'm getting old. It can be hard to change, and it can be painful at times too. But if you are trying to get to a point in your life that is not this or not here, and this isn't who you want to be, then first you got to know who it is that you want to be, or what it is you want to do. And second, give yourself every damn reason you can to get there. If you have to make things more painful, and sometimes you got to draw on what you have, and all you have is a lot of pain and anger, then that's what you got. If you're someone that can do things with positivity, go for it. But humans are built to draw change from negativity, and that's just, we're very negatively biased, unfortunately. And so, you know, hopefully this is to some extent helpful, and that, you know, if you have to hunker down for a bit and really focus in the things and the skills that are going to push you forward in life, then do it, because it's only going to better yourself and those around you. You won't regret it. You probably aren't going to want to stop eating a pound of sugar a day if you don't know about what it does to the body long term. Yeah, I mean, like, also, like, if you don't have a reason to do it, yeah, it's very, very true. But I think that is enough today about communication. Weirdly enough, a lot of this stuff that I talked about, I feel like a lot of it's applicable to D&D, but also real life, right, as well. hopefully it's been a very good sit down talking about, hey, communication. It starts with all of these very basic fundamentals. Later, I will have like other Game Master Academy sessions where I talk about communication on a different level, because this is just like basic foundational level stuff. And so there are levels or like echelons to emotional intelligence and being able to like cue in and then use that in your games as well. But right now it's just the very basic foundations of communication skills, because there are rungs to it. And this is going to be a very long series. So as you can imagine, we're going to be talking about a lot over a long period of time. But hopefully that's been helpful. Valexian, you know, hopefully this has been helpful for you. Hopefully I've been able to give you some good insight. Everyone else that's here lurking, thank you. You know, if you guys have anything you want to throw my way about anything D&D related, by all means, you know, throw them at me and we can talk about those situations together. You know what I think I might do? Let me go to Reddit. Maybe I can look at some situations like RPG horror stories and maybe give my like insight on it. That's also a thing I could do, right? So let's see. Okay, I'm going to go to DM Academy and I'm going to change my screen here. And I'm also going to change my Twitch title as well, so that way people know what it is that I'm doing more accurately. So let me do that first. Then I will talk about these RPG horror stories, or not necessarily horror story, but situations, and kind of giving my insight to it. Maybe respond to a couple as well. So let me change my title to Paladin's Game Master Academy. Let's see. Game Master Academy communication. And then I'm gonna put at the end Reddit advice. There. I should put it at the beginning. Maybe. There we go. You probably aren't gonna. Oh yeah, I already read your comment. Yes. Ta-da! Is it working? It is. Yay. Okay. And I'm there in the corner. Yes. Yes, I am. Perfect. By the way, if you're watching and you like the channel, consider following, or not. You know, I'll be here. I'll be here every week, every Sunday, regardless. So now let's talk about some things. I'm just gonna click on whatever's here. Need advice, rule, and mechanics. Sure. Okay, just getting my screen set up on the side over here first. Let's see what you guys are saying. Perfect. All right, was this too harsh? My players were staying in a military outpost surrounded by a force field that keeps dangerous enemies out. This force field is powered by consuming the soul of a random person inside it whenever it runs out of powers. Ah, it's the desperation tactic. Oh no, okay, instantly killing that person. My players knew this. They've been there before, and I asked them beforehand if they wanted to stay inside or outside the shield. One of them rolled a nat 1 on a D100 to be the one selected and died. The player and I felt it was a fair thing because he accepted the risk in staying there. Another player thought it was unfair though, that there was no fight or anything. He just died. He's already made a new character much stronger as well. Was this too harsh? Okay. So now I am going to get, I am just going to be very forward in saying this. Whenever I look through these things quite frequently, and I don't think that I've ever made a Twitch stream on it. Probably should more often. And I think I can very accurately say that 90+% of these things are just communication things, communication problems. So what is the thing here? So I mean, the thing that's being presented is this. There is a risk that if you stay inside of this barrier, your character might die. You know? Player knew the risk, accepted the risk, and stayed in. There was a consent given here by the player and the DM that if you stay here, you might die. And this other player thinks that it is unfair. So now what I would find interesting, and really the information that's lacking, is why does that player think it's unfair? They said there was no fight or anything. Okay, well, what's anything? No fight, no save, right? There was no chance, no save given. They just die, and it's like, okay, you know, I think that it would be unfair if the mechanic or the situation was not told ahead of time, but it was. So in this case, there is a willingness, there's a risk that is accepted by the player to stay here and understand that it's die. So I think that's just completely fair. I think that this other player, though, you know, I myself, if I had this player in my game and they were saying it's unfair, I think that comes down to two things: perspective and expectations. And so if I'm communicating the best to them and I'm listening to them and I'm listening to the reasons of why they think it's unfair, and I'm like, okay, well, you know, these are the circumstances, these are the facts, and this is, you know, something that we consented to. And at that point, if the player is continuing to be resistant or to disagree, you know, it's okay to disagree with the DM. I think that is healthy. What is not healthy is disagreeing with the dungeon master and then continuing to make us think about it, or continuing to let that bleed across multiple sessions, picking it out, pointing it out, and having this subsequent feeling of antagonism against you as a dungeon master. That is not healthy behavior. It is healthy to disagree on things and to not have the same viewpoint. That's okay, but that's why the dungeon master is there, to be the single point of adjudication and the final arbiter of yes or no on something, period. It is what it is, you know? So in this case, is the DM harsh? No. I think what would have been harsh is not letting the players know ahead of time that this was a thing, and then bam, your character's dead. So now it looks like I was very malicious in trying to kill a character. That's not good. So giving players an example before the actual thing could target them is good, because it gives them a little bit of a heads up. Now there are situations where maybe that's not possible, and maybe the thing isn't going to be as harsh as death, right? You're not going to know that a trap, you know, especially if it's something hidden, right? Those things typically are not meant to kill, but there could be forewarning about there being deadly traps that could kill, right? Case in point, Rappan Athuk, Monday. I had I had told the players ahead of time, hey, it's stacked against you. You need that 7th player or you're not going to be able to get through the dungeon. And there was swords that were capable of beheading the characters upon walking through a door. Well, they didn't perceive or check the door for traps. They then checked the door for traps afterwards on the next one. There was a sub-lich, which was a undead that failed to become a lich, that was stealing their powers, you know, and it was in a crypt by where the archmages were kept. You know, they know that they're in an archmage's crypt. That is a hint, right? That is forewarning that, hey, you're going into an area with high magic. Careful. That's fair, right? And so I think that a lot of these situations where people think it's unfair is that they themselves didn't acknowledge or didn't perceive the hints that were given to them as hints. And so their failure to perceive or know something or to deduce something is on them because they were not paying attention. Maybe, you know, I'm just going to go on a limb here. Maybe they weren't paying attention because they were on their phone. Maybe they weren't note taking. Maybe they weren't there at the session. There could be a million different things, right? And so I don't think that this is too harsh. I would look into the reasons why it is that this player thinks it's unfair. And also, were they even aware? Were they even aware that this is a thing? If the answer is no, then that's a problem on the player. The player wasn't paying attention at that point, right? So that is a different situation altogether. But if the DM was very genuine and open and honest, then I think this is fair. But we're only seeing one side of the story here. So just based on context, that's what I would think. But let's see what people have to say. Oh boy. Anything is fair if the player was informed and had the ability to opt out. Yes, okay, agreed. They knew the risk. They didn't know, and this was pulled. Then yeah, I'd be against it. Yep, true. Even if you set Tiamat in front of your level 1 party, don't do that. As long as they are informed that they could just not go there, and what to expect if they do, it's fine. Yeah, yep. They took a risk. Was it harsh? Yes. Was it too harsh? No. Both the DM and player felt it was fair, and all the players knew the risk. Okay, so this is a pretty easy done Game Academy one. Let's go to the next one. My party is terrified of everything. Need advice. All right, let's see. So, my party is terrified of everything. My current party is extremely risk averse and has a visceral reaction. So a visceral reaction is whenever you're physically reacting to something, just for context. Has a visceral reaction whenever another player introduces chaotic elements. I'd love to hear your ideas on how to proceed. Okay, that's interesting. Background. My current campaign involves a group of hags convening with Far Realm Cthulhu monsters. Ooh, nice. Okay, I love it. Consequently, the campaign heavily features betrayal, madness, and other types of eldritch dead. However, I think I may have succeeded too well in horrifying my players. Currently, my cerebral players spend literal hours of game time planning ways to cheese encounters. And while this bores the other players, they go along with it because no one wants to engage with the things beyond the stars. My party has gaslit themselves into thinking that their enemies are way more overpowered than they actually are. That's a good thing. Okay, resulting in boring as hell gameplay. On the more serious side, huge arguments and a PC ejection have occurred. Oh no, have occurred when our more adventurous players initiated chaotic events on their own. My scared players was so severely triggered that we had to pause our game for a while and rebuild group trust doing other things. I see a lot of red flags on the DM's part here. And okay, but let's just see, continuing on. I'm reading the things between the things here, but let's see. So far, I see two solutions. Bad guys up the ante. The classic super bad guys attacking characters you like trope. My party has chosen not to engage with the BBEGs. So the BBEGs show up at the city gates while all the toys that they've been allowed to work on. With all the toys they've been allowed to work on. Okay. This forces the party to act and is the route I've taken in my last session. However, I'm hesitant to keep using it because it feels like I'm dumbing my game down while holding my player at gunpoint. My magnum opus campaign is reduced to a bad guys come to town story, and my PCs get to validate their prior avoidance tactics. See, I told you they were too strong. I info dump everything out of context. I pull my players aside and say almost none of the baddies are too strong for you. You're way overpowered with 6 level 10 PCs and all of your BS legendary very rare items. And in the worst case scenario, our cleric has access to raise the head, greater restoration, and a whole. All right, I think I read enough. So this is a lot of red flags on the DM's part. I'm gonna tell you why. So I, as a dungeon master in my games, the whole point of the games that I run are to make a collective story with the others. And if I am trying to get something that I want out of the game, I'm already losing approaching a game. The thing that I am supposed to want going into any D&D game is to have fun with the players. If I am trying to create a magnus opus and my magnus opus demands that the players behave a certain way, it's not going to go well. I'm going to lose every single damn time. And that's the case that I'm seeing here, is that I think that the dungeon master has created situations that have led the players to behave this way. People don't behave that way randomly. There's a reason that these players are behaving that way. Maybe they have potentially gaslit themselves, but gaslit themselves with evidence that this is true. right? I don't think that it would be very common to say or experience groups that gaslight themselves just to gaslight themselves. Is not really, I mean, you can work yourself up to a frenzy. Hi, Dr. Squigs. Hope you're doing well. You can work yourself up to a frenzy by overthinking things, yes. And whenever we're talking about creatures from the far realm, I mean, we got to talk about, I mean, we're talking about Cthulhu level threats. We're talking about creatures that have quite literally the potential to undo existence and create immense amount of pain and suffering. So yeah, you know, I might overthink it a little bit. But I think that the emphasis that is being put by this dungeon master in this collective narrative is telling to me that they're focusing on the wrong things. The problem they're presenting is not the players, it's them. The dungeon master is the problem in this case, because they are not making it easy for the players to play in this collective. And so this trust building that has been broken is partly their fault. And also it sounds like there's some sort of communication problems between the player characters just based on the arguments and ejection of a player, which are two very big red flags that you see in the game. And you get the arguments and the ejection whenever people are so aggressive and intense and serious about something to the point that they just can't see eye to eye and just force someone out. And so there are a lot of really intense emotions in this that I'm seeing, and you know, that's unfortunate. And you know, and so how I would fix this is, first, if it was me, I would understand what my part in all of this is being played. I would, if I was this dungeon master, I probably would accept that I have some role or responsibility in the game going this way, and I would have to know what exactly I have contributed to make this the way that it is. Because the dungeon master has a very natural leadership role in terms of games, and so I think that taking responsibility would help a lot. I'm not sure what the extent of what that would look like because there's not enough information, but that's the first thing I would do to fix the trust building, because the relationship with the people in the game, the real people, the players, is infinitely more important than the relationship the characters are having in the game. If the players aren't able to respect each other or me, yeah, that's not good. So hopefully this guy's able to understand, you know, their part in all this, and also that the players, they see their part in all of this too. Now, if we're going from a game mechanic, because I know this, the question here is like, you know, well, how do I fix this? Well, one, I probably would introduce weaker versions of the monsters or the bad guys and show weakness in the threat that they're so scared of. Us as people, we can conceptualize horror. Horror is beyond our imagination, but the moment that we see or put our thoughts into a physical being, the threat in our minds actually diminishes so much more. And so being able to put a physical representation of the thing that they're afraid of and showing how easy it is to beat it up will lessen up that bias of fear and giving more empowering. Also, I'm guessing that these players have probably had a couple of losses as well, because I've seen groups, and I've also had a group where I was also a perpetrator of this as well, where I have made games too difficult, and they were just losing, and the players give up. Give them a win, man. You know, like, let them win. If the players are acting really defensive, then that probably means that they're having a lot of losses, potentially, or they see no hope, or their narrative has been painted in a way that they shouldn't even try, so why bother? Their power has been disrespected or diminished to the point that it's not even worth taking the risk, so why try? Give them a win. Something, a small thing is all they need. They need hope that the things that they're going to be going up against are killable, doable, and overcomable. So that would be my advice on a whole scale. But let's see what people say. This is it seems like a little bit of a touchy one, but let's go down. You have a group of incompatible player expectations that need to be resolved out of game. That's also true. I think I mentioned this earlier. It's hard to have a player that's here, and when all the other players are over here, you need to bring the expectations in the middle. Everyone's got to be on the same page, because whenever you have someone on the outside and everyone else is over on this side, it's gonna break. It's like a teeter-totter, right? Like your central fulcrum is here, but if there's one person here and 4 people here, there's no way that they're gonna be able to compete, right? So you gotta, instead of having them fight against each other, you gotta bring them together in the middle. Yeah, more like option 2. Tell them how difficult you aim the fights to be. Also tell them that if they can't stop endlessly planning and thinking, maybe you should change the setting of the campaign. Maybe they want more of the classic enemies. But if it isn't a problem with power or setting, you have to tell them clearly that they take too much time and they need to change that. You can encourage this in-game, but because it seems to be always the case, it's better to directly talk to them. Yes, communication, communicate. If there's something bothering you as a dungeon master, then just talk about it. The fact that this maybe wasn't even talked about beforehand raises a lot of problems. I mean, and here's the key for that. If you find yourself complaining about someone or your party to someone else, just say that what you're saying to the person, and you can avoid so much stress. If I have I'm just using as an example, if I have a problem with Dr. Squigs, which I don't, I love you, Dr. Squigs, you're great. And I'm going to someone else and I'm like, yeah, Dr. Squigs has done this and he's doing that. Take that conversation and say it to that person directly. I would just say to Dr. Squigs, like, hey, Dr. Squigs, you did this, you did that. This doesn't, this is, this, I don't like it. Of course, a little bit more tactfully than that. You save yourself so much energy and so much heartache and so much more problems just by being honest to the person directly. Being conflict averse is gonna bite you in the ass 100% of the time, every time. And then your advice ends up here on DM Academy. And then I'm gonna have to read it. The game is about taking risks and just do things instead of endlessly pondering what might be. Tell them what you think should be enough time for planning before going into action, and they have to go with that. Don't be too strict, but set limits. But it's also a thing about trusting the DM to make the right decision, that the PCs have a fair chance that they need to trust you on that. Yes! Thank you. Okay, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Based on the mention of Cthulhu and the things beyond the stars as the main adversaries, I can see the likely place where the mismatch is coming from. In these stories, if you encounter beings from the mythos, either run or die or go insane. The world is about the futility and fragility of man against beings beyond comprehension. The resolutions are about avoiding and binding the dark powers and maybe saving or killing their human accomplices. This mismatches between D&D and its power creep and easy access to resurrection with no insanity mechanics is glaringly obvious. To OP, if you want to play in a world with unknowable horrors, your players are going to react like they are always on their back foot. You want them to take on these strange beings and herb stomp them, you need to have a re-zero session that examines how the campaign was described versus what kind of encounters you are picturing. Either they are heroes who expose and dispose of the weirdness, or they are people trying to survive in the world of the unknowable dread. Good luck. This is true. This is very true. It's just the difference of expectation of what's going on, what's been presented. And it's very true. I mean, we're talking about creatures that will make you go insane just by looking at it. So I think this is a multifactorial problem that's very complex. Having a recession 0 seems like the best thing to do, but also just being fucking honest about the situation too and taking responsibility for their own parts. The thing is that the damage has already been done. So you can't just, forget about it and move on. You have to address the problems that have already happened. You can't just ignore it. And so unless they're able to address the problems that happen and be very real and honest with themselves and things that happened, it's just going to be a repeat. Sorry. Hopefully this person is able to figure it out, and that they do have a good experience and they're able to get the advice that they need. Players want to choose a subclass I don't feel is appropriate. Okay. 90% of these are going to be, 90% plus are going to be about communication. I I've been DMing a campaign for players for some time now. One of our players started off as a warlock, genie, and eventually decided to multi-class into blood hunter. Next session, they are leveling up, and it will be his 3rd level in blood hunter. Nice. He has expressed a lot of interest in the Order of the Lycan subclass, but I just don't think it's an appropriate choice. I don't have any plans in our campaign to introduce werewolves, at least anytime soon, and I feel that introducing them in the current narrative is silly and a bit distracting. I'm worried that this player is just wanting to go for the ultimate edgy hardcore build, and the other players in the group have expressed that his character is too often the focus of things. Should I outright tell him I won't allow him to play the subclass? Should I... Okay. You know how earlier I was saying, hey, you know, I don't like this about Dr. Squigs. Instead of just saying to Dr. Squigs, just tell the damn person what you're telling us. In this situation. Sorry, it should be less intense. Tell the person exactly what you're telling us here, right? Hey, this is what I think. Go forward from there. It's honestly really that simple. But a lot of people are conflict averse or don't know how to bring up critical conversations. Also, big red flag, if the players are talking about this other player behind that player's back, they probably are not good players to be playing with. If I was a player and other people are talking about me, I am leaving the table. Sorry, I'm not going to be hanging around with people that are going to be talking about me behind my back, putting posts on Reddit behind my back. I'm gone. Bye. I feel sorry for this player. I feel like they have this idea that they want to play something, and they're not being given a proper chance to express this idea. Even if it is true that they are being the main focus and ultimate edgy characters, so what? What if they want to be an ultimate edgy hardcore character? What is so bad about that? Let them be an ultimate edgy hardcore character. And I mean, if it is like becoming too much of a problem, then just state, you know, then just approach the behaviors that are making it problematic and compared to the game as a whole. But let him have his edgy character. You know, I don't see a problem with it personally. I mean, I'm okay with edgy characters. Yeah, have your edgy Naruto, Sasuke, whatever. Are you having fun? Great. Is everyone else having fun with your character? Great. If not, then let's approach those behaviors so that you can have your character that also meshes with the rest of the group. And if it's a mismatch, then be honest. You know, I think that it's a lot more respectful and to tell someone like, hey, there is not a proper balance of playstyles here, you know, and it's okay to say like, hey, you know, playstyles are very different. I think that, so what I do is I try to find another game for players to go into. I go the extra steps of not only removing the player, but I say, hey, like this other person is running a game that is, they have more of a playstyle that you have. Why don't you try playing with them? Because I don't want to just cut people off. I want to give them a better option. And I find that works, that will save me a lot of respect with that individual. Because even though that player might not have the same playstyle as these other 4 players, that's not their fault. That's not any of their faults. It's a circumstance of how things happen sometimes. And so if I do end up having a group later that does have the same playstyle as this player, well, then I invite them back, right? And so I want to keep these connections healthy and positive. And so that's where, you know, it's just a lot better to just really put your best foot forward and trying to resolve things in a way that's good for you and them. But they're not all of a sudden out of a game with nowhere else to go. It sucks. It sucks to be rejected. It's a shitty feeling. But if you do your best to try to give them a better game because you just want them to have a good experience, then you're not thinking about yourself. You're thinking about the other person too. And that'll go a lot farther in the long run than you just thinking about you and your game and yourself and your interests. Right? So hopefully that's good advice. Let's do another one. Damage threshold and stacking damage. Oh, okay, mechanics. Okay, this is a mechanic question. Just looking for quick clarification. Say a creature has a damage threshold of 10. Oh, okay, yeah, the party rogue attacks and it can sneak attack it. They roll 8 damage on their attack and a 6 for sneak attack. Together, the damage exceeds the damage threshold, but separately they don't. You count the damage. Yes, I would. Because sneak attack, you apply it onto any attack. And so, yes, it's also the same thing. You can also reference the same thing for like, let's say you have a fire sword, right? A flame blade. Yes, it's gonna do slashing damage, but it also does fire damage. You technically roll them separate, but it's part of the same attack. Same thing for sneak attack. So yes, in this case, I would say yes. I would apply it onto the same attack because it's one attack that they've done, not two, but one. So the damage comes together for a total of 14. So yes, I think that I would. Yes, because sneak attack damage is an additional damage for the attack. Great. Easy question. Made my first high-level homebrew monster. Congratulations. Any suggestions will be appreciated. Epoch, Pepper, Syrian, and Zenith. Stay away from this post. Critical spoilers here. Okay. Hi, everybody. Next week, I will play my last session of my campaign for the event. I have created a homebrew sheet for my BBEG. Ooh, there's a link. Taris and Avatar Gargantuan Elemental CR25. Okay. Well, since we're kind of talking more about communication, I don't really want to get too far into mechanics. I will save this for another time. Gaming with a fairy in the party. Need advice. Okay. What is this advice? This will be the last one, and then I'll kick it off on a raid. As the title says, in my next campaign, I'll be running with a fairy PC in the party. Okay? The PC is a 17-inch tall fairy ranger, and I'm curious how any of you have dealt with these PCs. There are tons of areas where they are going to be able to hide and such that others could not. Definitely curious about your rulings in combat and how much damage they can actually output. Thank you in advance. When it comes to creatures that are smaller than medium, they all do the same damage output because we don't want people to feel too inferior. Now, it's a small character. They're clearly choosing to take a lot of detriments for their size for being able to, you know, be tiny and hide. The thing is that hiding is an action. As a ranger, you don't get a bonus action to hide. And you don't get advantage for being a size. You just hide, right? So not much there to do. Now, the thing about this is damage output. So there is damage output for being larger than medium, but not damage output for being smaller than medium. Punishing characters to do less damage for very little gain, especially if it's for a class that doesn't make sense, makes absolutely no sense. If this was a tiny, if it was a tiny character that's able to bonus action hide, maybe with a rogue, maybe I would make that sort of assumption of like, hey, this seems a little bit unbalanced. Maybe at that point, but I don't think this is unbalanced. I think that them being able to do their normal damage output is fine. Now, them being tiny does not mean that they get to go behind something and just hide because they want to. They still have to hide. They have to use their action to hide. Same as everyone else, unless you're behind total cover. Now, there are going to be more instances that they can be behind total cover, but those total covers might not be very safe. Just because you hide in a pot doesn't mean, just because you walk into a pot doesn't mean that you're hidden. They know you're there. And if you look at the rules for stealth, it's very clear about when you can and cannot use stealth. And I am going to say this very fairly and outwardly that a lot of people don't know how to do stealth correctly in their games. You have to be out of sight first. Also, even if you're out of sight, the creatures can see you going in that direction. So it's not like they don't know where you're at. It's the same problem whenever creatures go invisible. You know where they went invisible at, and you might know that they're standing there, right? Doesn't mean that they get automatic, like, stealth just for being visible. It's the same thing here. You don't automatically stealth just because you're behind total cover. They still know that you're there behind total cover. It doesn't matter what size you are. So, and I would just communicate that, you know, review your rules. Know your rules for stealthing. Know your rules for size differences and damage outputs. And if there is an imbalance in the game that does present for this being a fairy ranger, then, you know, talk about it at that point. the problem that I've seen is overcorrection. DMs that overcorrect are putting a negative bias, negative creatures, a negative bias on that this inclusion of this kind of character is gonna break the game, and so they overcorrect ahead of time without even giving it a damn chance. In my next campaign, so like they haven't even ran a session yet, so they're worried about a potential problem and they're trying to prevent a problem that might not even be a problem. So don't correct. You know, I think that they're trying to look for advice because they think that this character is going to be really strong for being tiny, but it's really not. I've had tiny characters before. I've had plasmoids, very easy to kill. So I think their game will go just fine if they don't change the rules. No, that'd be my take. But let's see what people say. Just reread stealth rules. Just reread stealth rules so you know what to expect. Nothing different. They are still small race, so anything a halfling can do, so can a fairy. Just run it the same way. Small races can move through larger races' spaces, can mount medium creatures and have disadvantage on heavy weapons. That's it. On the flip side, don't nerf their damage. Yes. Woo! Sorry, I'm happy to see that other people have the same mindset. Okay, so I'm going to leave off with the raid. Thank you guys so much for joining me for today's stream. Like the content, consider following. If you want to watch the other episodes in this Game Master series, I will relink my YouTube. Go and give a follow, share. You can join me on Discord. Go. Oh no. Copy link address. There we go. There it is. That's my Discord. Hope you all have a wonderful Sunday. Genuinely hope your games go really well this week. Have a lot of fun, kick some ass, slay some dragons, and let me know next week how your games went. Let's do a raid and let's see what was online. Let's see. Let's see. Who is online? Let's go. Ooh, Hans is online. They're playing Injustice Gods Among Us, but you know, I haven't raided them in a long time. Generally very, very nice. Very, very nice person. Let's give them a raid. Hope you guys have a wonderful week. Genuinely. Have a good one, and we'll see you next week or tomorrow for Rappan Athuk. Have a good one.